Welcome to the Silent Thinking Podcast, a space to slow down, breathe, and reconnect. Today I'm reading From the Way of the 3-Year-Old Why by Donn. Just listen and let the stillness support you. Chapter 6, The Fifth 3-Year-Old Guideline, Monday, May 29. Dan checked his watch. Only 2 hours to go until he had promised Elizabeth Martinez an updated proposal focused on a virtual workshop and associated training. Time tightened around him, but he felt confident he could meet the deadline. After all, the material itself came from topics he had presented dozens of times before, and he had enough conversation with Elizabeth to understand the unique challenges and opportunities within agile manufacturing. Nothing seemed to stand in his way, except for that dry feeling. Why can't I just finish this thing? His old friend, Donn Brown, popped into his mind. Donn had worked as a chief engineer at a radio station where Dan worked as the morning drive DJ and program director. Donn told him 2 kinds of engineers worked in the radio. The first kind wanted to implement routines to keep things running smoothly. Ideally, someone else figured out what needed doing, and the maintenance-oriented engineer would do it efficiently, dependably, and on time. The second kind loved solving problems, figuring out something never before attempted. They lived for challenges and adrenaline, but got bored with routine maintenance. Donn clearly embodied the second kind. In the early days of personal computers, Donn owned a Commodore 64, so named because of its, for the time, large 64-kilobyte memory. Supposedly, that represented the maximum the device could handle. Donn had refused to accept the limitation. Before memory sticks, flash drives, or anything resembling them, he had figured out a way to expand the RAM on his Commodore 64, which he slept with, to a full megabyte. That's more than the whole federal government has, he claimed. Dan believed if he asked Donn Brown to build a personal fission reactor, Donn would do it with parts bought at Radio Shack and cobbled from leftover pieces of a radio transmitter. But he wouldn't write any of it down, and he would lose all interest in doing it again. Maybe I'm a second kind too, Dan thought, or maybe I just get bored easily. You don't look bored, Dan, but you do look like you're puzzling over something. Dan turned to find the now familiar Kelly holding out a cup of something steaming. For me? Thank you. What is it? Try something new. It's called a London fog, but I sweetened it up the way I know you would like it. He blew across the frothy top to cool it a bit, took a sip, and said, "Wow, that is good. You read my mind. In fact, I was just thinking I might be bored, and then you told me it was something else. Special ability?" Again he smiled. "Not mind reading, just face reading. You're turning something over in there. Problem?" "I'm not sure it's a problem," he said. He told her about Donn Brown, embellishing the memory a bit as they both chuckled over the eccentric genius. "You used the word twice in your story," Kelly said. Genius. It's an interesting word. The ancient Romans didn't say you were a genius. They said you had a genius. Really? I did not know. Where did you learn that? Oh, I don't remember. It's something I learned a long time ago. I remember Augustine thought your genius might be the same thing as your soul. It's a little different from, but similar to, the idea of the muses. Have you heard of them? Only all my life, Dan laughed. My first editor constantly reminded me I had a deadline and I had to produce whether or not my muse inspired me. A wan smile, and then Kelly said, "Maybe your muse is always inspiring you. It's just that sometimes you can hear her better than others." I could use her right now, for sure. I have a little less than 2 hours to get this done. I have everything I need to finish it, but somehow I'm just not feeling it. And this material I'm putting together won't inspire anyone. As you reminded me earlier, even hard-nosed executives decide first based on emotion, justifying the decision based on logic. I have all the logic here, but the emotion isn't there yet. Maybe because you're not feeling it, she said. If you don't feel it, it's hard to make someone else feel it. I think you're right, but I'm not sure how to gin up the feeling when it isn't there. Kelly looked off in the distance for so long that then almost asked if she was okay. When she turned to look directly into his eyes, narrowed her own, and said, "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Depends on how personal. For instance, I don't mind telling you I like cheese better than pie. It's not personal like a secret or anything, just a hard question." Then stopped kidding and returned her gaze. She seemed serious. "I can guarantee I answer, but go ahead." "It doesn't sound like your heart is in this." "Do you want to do these speaking gigs?" "Of course. I mean, I've been doing this for so long. Plus, I get a lot of satisfaction out of seeing the light bulb go on for people." "How long has it been since that was enough?" Then looked as if she had slapped him. Enough? How could it not be enough, is it? "Look, Dan, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just a barista. Sometimes I like to give people ideas to test, but I can't help but wonder. I've seen people who keep doing something just because they've been doing it. The problem is not that the light has gone out of whatever they're doing, or at least it's not only that. It's that keeping on Rob's time, they could put into doing what does light them up. I have to admit, I don't feel the satisfaction I once did. But is that reason enough to quit? My daddy raised me to stick with stuff, to not give up when things get tough. In fact, Angela Duckworth says grit is a key to success, to ability to persevere. That's true. I know Angela, and I would agree with her on that. But there's more to it than perseverance. She talks about passion as well. In fact, she says grit is perseverance in pursuit of a worthwhile goal, sticking with something that doesn't matter to you or doesn't matter as much as something else isn't grit. It's just wasting your life. She looked down at the table and said, "Can I borrow your sketchpad?" Then passed the red book over to her. She opened it to a blank page and drew with a pen that seemed to materialize in her hand. While I'm more into the philosophies of the ancient Greeks, there's a surprising overlap with some of the thought systems that come from Asia. There's a concept that comes to us through Japan called ikigai. Have you heard of it? I've seen references to it, but I'm not sure I get it. She drew 4 overlapping circles, writing on the circles and the overlaps, explaining as she went. The concept actually comes from the Japanese island of Okinawa, which boasts some of the longest lived people in the world. It's not the only factor in their long lives, but research suggests that having a sense of purpose in life, a sense of accomplishment in something that matters to you, is one factor in what Dan Butner called blue zones. The word translates to a reason for living. Now that you mention it, I've read Butner's work. I remember that people he studied came from all over the world, but they had several factors in common. Exactly. You can attribute longevity and quality of life to just one factor, but this factor is one many people overlook. You can divide ikigai up into 4 areas of life. First, there's identifying what we love. Then there's what the world needs. Then what people will pay you for. Finally, there's what we're good at. There are overlaps between any 2 of these, like here. She pointed to the area where what the world needs and what people will pay you for overlapped and wrote vocation. This is where almost any business book will tell you to start. Find a need and fill it. There are things in the world needs, but that people aren't willing to pay for. You need both. That's enough to make a living, but Ikigai suggests it's not enough to make a life. Then looked over the rest of the drawing and pointed to another overlap. What about this one between what we love and what we're good at? Kelly wrote passion in that area and smiled. Do you see what happens there when you leave out the other two circles? Sure, just because you love it and you're good at it doesn't mean the world's need it. And it certainly doesn't mean anyone will pay you for it. Exactly. We could look at how any of these overlap, and we would need a three-dimensional model to illustrate overlaps between circles on opposite sides. I can get into a two-dimensional drawing. Just because you don't see an area of overlap between what we love and what you can get paid for doesn't mean there isn't an overlap. But don't get tied up in the potential overlaps. The key is right here in the middle, where all four areas come together. That's your Ikigai, your reason for living, for that sense of accomplishment. There is something for you then, something that you love, that the world needs, that you can get paid for, and that you are or can be good at. That's your Ikigai. She turned once again to Dan and looked deep into his eyes as if she could see his soul. So let me ask you something. You said you don't know how to gin up the feeling when it is there. When you reread something you wrote that fits, the way a properly sized hat fits, do you have to gin up a feeling or do you just feel it? Well, of course, I don't have to work at it. The feeling is how I know it fits. Kelly arched her eyebrows, put her pen away somewhere, and headed toward the kitchen. Over her shoulder, she said, so expand that. If you're not feeling it when you look at the marketing stuff, it may be because you're not looking at the right thing. She disappeared through the door, but her aura remained. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, he thought. Of course. He knew he had decided. Now he just needed to justify it. And I know just how to do it. Kelly had him questioning what he wanted for his business, heck, for his life. For sure, he wasn't feeling it, and Kelly's diagram helped him see why. He had been working in an area that the world needed, that he was good at, and that at least some people would pay him for. But did he love speaking? He wasn't sure. He thought maybe he just didn't want to be a quitter, especially after having put so many years into building his speaking business. He was sure, though, that writing fit the love, need, and good at areas of the Ikigai, and in the past had fit the get paid for category. Writing filled all categories. But maybe I'm too old to start back on the writing track, he thought. As he sipped his cooling, but still delicious London fog, inside hit him like the pond ice cracking. They knew deep down that income wasn't a real problem. He worried that retirement would leave him and his family short of funds. But that worry lingered as a legacy from his parents, survivors of the Great Depression and World War II. That's why it surprised him when he and Grace sat down with a retirement counselor and realized they would actually be in good financial shape. Grace didn't want him to stop working because she didn't want the blame if he was bored, or maybe because she feared having him underfoot all the time, then grinned when he thought about that. But he had the leeway to choose how he would work. After all, most of the Blue Zone elders kept working, though not out of economic necessity. They simply loved what they did. That meant that getting old, or at least older, wasn't a bug. It was a feature. He had the freedom to take a chance, freedom he had not since his youth. So why not what he loved? Then owned a book entitled Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. The title implied a false promise made explicit in the Ikigai diagram. Doing what you love doesn't guarantee financial success. Maybe though, doing what you love fits what the old philosophers would call necessary but not sufficient. His passion guaranteed nothing regarding money, but it formed a solid foundation. Then made a couple of preliminary phone calls, and then dialed Elizabeth Martinez, confirmed in his earlier insight. He didn't want to leave her in the lurch, but he told her he had realized he was not a good fit for her event. And he gave her the contact info for another speaker. She'll be perfect for you, he said. Plus, I know she can travel without a problem. In fact, she loves hopping on a plane, even seems to relish getting through the TSA lines. Wow, Dan, I appreciate your honesty and your referral, Elizabeth said. It shows you want to take care of us. I call as soon as we get off the phone. Great, Dan said. I checked with her before calling you, and she'll be expecting your call. We won't forget you, Dan. Again, thanks. Tuesday, May 30th. Dan hadn't been to the library in 3 weeks. Along with the BB, the library served as a third-place refugee, a place of quiet and focus with few interruptions, a place he could hear himself think. Today he wanted to do a little personal research, so he rewarded himself for making a decision. He had a notion that made little sense, yet somehow did, and he couldn't shake it. To clear his head, Dan needed to dig into the name he had seen on Kelly's license, Calliope Anagnostopoulos. It was a mouthful, and not typical of the Tennessee folks he knew, but it sounded Greek, and Dan knew nearby Knoxville had a sizable population of folks with Greek ancestry. He picked an unoccupied table and set up his laptop and sketchpad. He didn't know what he thought, but he preferred the old-fashioned feel of physical books when he started research on a project. However, he didn't mind speeding things up with a few basic searches first. A simple Google search revealed Anagnostopoulos to be a family name for a few famous people. In fact, it was the original family name for Spiro Agnew, the disgraced vice president of the United States under Richard Nixon. Not very auspicious, Dan thought, but a little deeper probing showed the name meant reader or scholar, which certainly fit the Kelly he knew, but Calliope nudged at him further. He thought he remembered the name from his junior high reading interests, when he had spent hours poring through books about Greek and Roman culture and mythology. Then noticed Sharon, the longtime reference librarian at her desk. Skilled as he was at using Google and lesser-known search tools, he had always found Sharon and her co-workers extremely valuable in doing background research on any topic he could throw at them. Whether for a lecture for one of his classes, a pitch to a client, or a workshop he developed, Sharon always had insight into sources that he would otherwise have missed. "What can I help you find today, Dan?" she asked when he approached the desk. "I'm onto something a little different today, Sharon. What would you suggest as a good starting place for getting to know a little about Greek mythology?" Wow, that is different from your usual. Are you teaching a new college course next term? I can't imagine a corporate audience would find that scintillating. Nothing too complex. I'm working what you might call a personal project. I just need a little background. Sharon led him to a section of the reference titles only for use in the library. No checkouts allowed. I think you'll find several helpful titles here. Let me know if you need any help with other resources. We have some online courses available for no charge through the library portal. Thanks a bunch. I think I can find what I need right here. Dan began perusing the titles in the mythology reference section. He recognized a classic reference book, Bullfinch Mythology. He followed the index entry to Calliope, where he read, "The Muses were the daughters of Jupiter and Mnemosyne." Calliope was the muse of epic poetry. He felt a slight rise of hair on the back of his neck. Just a name that goes along with the family name quite well, he thought. Next to Bullfinch sat a promising-looking title, Who is Who in Greek and Roman Mythology. It had several hundreds, if not thousands, of entries in the index. These Greek gods and demigods really got around, he thought. Calliope received more space here, including a family tree, both ancestry and descendants. Her entry said, Calliope was the muse of epic poetry, telling of the heroes and their deeds, and she could also play any musical instrument. Callie's parents named her aptly, he thought. She's certainly been my muse lately. Then turned back to Bullfinch again and flipped to the M's, looking up muses. When a folded piece of paper fell out, it almost didn't surprise him. Then, it said on the outside in the familiar handwriting, but he saw other print there as well. When he unfolded it, he found an old magazine ad for Welk Seltzer on the back of another ad for Lucky Strike cigarettes. It's toasted from Collier's Weekly, dated in January 1920. Someone had torn out with care to use for a brief note. They used the white space of the ads, but occasionally wrote over a face or a seltzer bottle. You put 2 and 2 together, Dan. That's excellent. It means more to you than if someone just told you 4. It's perfectly fine to get help from many sources. After all, none of us get through life alone. But there's something satisfying about coming up with your own answer. 3-year-olds soak up information the way a black hole sucks in light, but they delight in figuring things out for themselves. Did you know Welsh grape juice solved the problem? Thomas Welsh was a follower of a Methodist group that led the temperance movement and advocated the use of unfermented grape juice for church communion. But it was hard to get grape juice to not ferment. Welch came up with a commercially viable way of pasteurizing grape juice. He found the answer he needed when he needed it. Nobody else can give you the answer to your reason for living, Dan, but if you keep digging, you will find your answer. It felt like it was there all along, just waiting for you to uncover it, and in a way that is true. An old Greek word now lives in modern English that represents the feeling eureka. It literally means, I found it. No one can find it for you, although others can help you look, but you have to find it yourself. I don't think the owner of this magazine will mind me tearing out an ad page to leave you this note. I think about the time you find this note, you will also have found another important insight that has led you to a decision. Trust your knowing. Then carefully folded the magazine page back together, put it into his tablet case. He pulled out his sketchbook and turned to his page of Cali notes. He wrote, the 5th guideline. Look for the aha. 3-year-olds love learning, and they love it when they figure something out. Like flipping on a light switch. When your light bulb goes on, it lights up your heart. I'm not sure my light bulb has gone on, Dan thought, but I'm almost certain I can feel the switch. Thank you for sharing this quiet moment with me. If this brought you peace, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it with someone who might need a little stillness too. Until next time, keep listening inward.